Good morning, guys. This is Laurie of Laurie Sewing, and today I'm just kind of playing with my new Brother sewing machine. It was introduced in the video that I uploaded today, and then I'm also going to be working on the McCalls pattern 3472. I have most of the mats cut out, and then I'm going to also do this one time permitting today. But I wanted to go over a couple of the things on this sewing machine because I decided after looking at it that it could be intimidating. If you are brand new to sewing and you get yourself a sewing machine, unless you have maybe an introductory class at the sewing center where you purchase your sewing machine, you might be overwhelmed. And often, especially in this particular timeline, we're purchasing things online and even from Amazon, and there wouldn't be the opportunity to take a class or watch, an employee kind of run through a quick little, this is how you do this part. So I thought, I'll just go ahead and give a little bit of time to some of the things that you can do, especially if you're brand new to sewing. So I'm going to cut a piece of white fabric, just something I've had in my stash for a while. I'm going to say over 20 years. There are several ways that you can create a stitch guide for your sewing machine. And honestly, I don't really need one because this sewing machine sets everything. So in other words, I don't have to put on a presser foot and then do some adjusting to the stitch length and the stitch width to get a completely different stitch. This sewing machine just automatically does that. But I'm really curious about the stitches that I think I might use the most. That one be a surprise for you guys. Okay, so what I plan to do is press this with starch. Any kind of starch, but especially a heavy starch, will provide just enough stability to your fabric to really help it go through the machine, just like it would if you had a stabilizer applied. So that's basically what I plan to do, and I'm also going to be folding it in half like so, and I'll just be doing these stitches like so. Alright, so I'm going to starch this and press it, and when I come back we're going to do 6 stitches. As an FYI, I wanted to show you, I did not press the drawn ink side on my ironing board. I used a separate piece of fabric to press onto because that almost always happens right there when you use a regular ink, which I did obviously, and I didn't want that on my ironing board, and I didn't want to press with my iron on this side in case this transferred and then I pressed something else and basically ruined it by pressing ink into it. So it's always a good idea, especially if you're using starch, to cover up whatever it is that you're pressing if you've marked on it. Otherwise you might end up with a mess. Okay, so let's get the fun little fun pack out and see. We have all these different feet. So these 2 feet right here, J and N, and then these stitches right here. So this right here is the throat plate, and it provides you with the seam allowance information that you need if you're creating something. So for example, most apparel patterns, at least the big four, Butterick, Simplicity, McCalls, and Vogue, generally speaking, will use a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that is the distance from the tip of the needle, where the needle would be entering into the fabric, and the edge, the cut edge of the fabric. Let's say I'm going to make a seam right here. This is an outside leg seam. You're making a pair of pants. Let me back it up so you can see what I'm talking about. We're just going to pretend like this is the outside leg seam on a pair of pants. So you got the two right sides together and you're going to stitch. And it says to stitch 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so that means from this cut edge in, the distance between here and where you begin sewing is the seam allowance, and that should be 5/8 of an inch. So we would set our piece of fabric down, and on this sewing machine, this very first line right here is 5/8 of an inch. So I would make sure that the edge of my fabric is right on that very first line, just like that. And then if I begin sewing and I just keep it on that line, then the seam allowance will be correct, which means the fit of the pants, if I've chosen the correct size, will be perfect because I have stitched 5/8 of an inch according to what the pattern has said that I need to make whatever size I'm wearing. Okay, so I figured out this morning there's a button. This button right here has a little backwards symbol, a little hook arrow. Let's see if I can get it close enough without it blurring out on me. Right here, okay? That, I believe, is the button that allows the sewing machine to lock the stitch in place, meaning that when I start sewing, it should go backwards and then come forward. Okay, here we go. Yes. I'm on stitch 13. Oops. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Needle up. There's a button that you push. Is it this one? Yes. Okay, I need to reset this to to stitch number 1. Okay. See, it's going backwards now. It's locking the stitch. Right, if you just push that button once. Okay, and then needle up and cut the threads. Okay, so back you up a little bit. Here is the inside leg, or the outside leg seam. You can see where it started and it backed up and then it continued forward, and then I pushed the reverse button and it backed up on itself and then it came forward. That's called locking your stitches. Alright, and if we open up our pretend pants, there is our pretty outside leg seam. Looks really good. And it has that perfect 5/8 of an inch seam allowance because we stayed on that line right there. Okay, so next, looking at my guide, I know that I need to have foot number J which I believe I do on my machine. And I'm going to go ahead and just do some stitches. And I'm going to go super fast. I've got the machine set on high speed. Okay, and then it just automatically stops after that third stitch. I have managed to get ink on my machine. Oh, goodness me. Okay. And, oh, it doesn't want to release. There we go. Alright. So that's the first sample. Whoa. I have to remember that. Right there. Alright. Next, we're going to do stitch number 8. Stitch number 8 also requires foot J. Right. So I will turn the dial over here. That will put me at stitch number 8. Okay. Foot J. Here we go. Now you might be thinking, as I have, why am I beating this machine backwards like that? It's on a little ledge. I need to remove this mat. I purchased a sewing machine mat that will arrive Friday. Today is Wednesday, May the 5th, and the mat will arrive on Friday, May the 7th. When it arrives, I will remove this and put that mat down, and it's a foam mat that should keep the machine from rocking and twisting and moving, which will be wonderful. But for the moment, it's, no matter how lightly I touch the machine, it looks like I'm just pushing it into the next county, when in fact it's the mat underneath it. Alright, so this is stitch number 8. Very nice. Alright, stitch 14 also uses J foot. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Alright, and we'll see what stitch 14 can do for us. As soon as it hits the third stitch on that lock stitch, it just stops sewing. And then you push the needle up, raise the presser foot, and cut your thread. I need to pull that thread out. So this is an overlock stitch. If I had been stitching along the edge, it would be overlocking just almost exactly like a serger without cutting the fabric. Okay, and we're going to try stitch 23, same foot, J. Okay, stitch 23, 1, 2, 3 is coming up, J foot. Okay, here we go. I feel like I need to go all the way down. It's a smaller version. Oh, I forgot to needle up. It's a smaller version of the stitch that I just did, and looks more like an applique stitch. Oh, I haven't been showing you the reverse side. So this is the back side, the bobbin, 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 bobbin on these. Okay. And now we're moving into stitch 38 where we'll need to switch to the in foot. And I'm going to trim some of the thread on my sample. I used to keep a portfolio of stitches for the Bernina, and I had my students do the same thing for their sewing machine. So even if their sewing machine would only do a straight and a zigzag, we would get the stitch length and width that they needed, and then they would be able to just reference this and say, okay, I need to have it set on a 2.0 or a 1.5 or a 3.0 to get this look. And then we would keep that in a notebook so that they could just flip to it and go, okay, that's what I need to do. And if you find that helpful, I do recommend it. It's way better than having to fiddle with your sewing machine every time. Okay, so for stitch number 38, we need the in foot. So we switch it out. Like so. Alright, and then just move up to number 38. Alright. 38 was, okay, yeah. And there we go. I used to use this stitch on the edges of collars and sleeve bands on children's clothing, heirloom type dresses and whatnot. Okay, so the next stitch is stitch 67. It also uses foot in, and it is the surprise stitch. I'm mainly just curious. So here we go. Stitch 67, right? Yes, okay. So we'll turn the dial all the way up. Here we go. Okay, and let's see what it looks like. Isn't that adorable? How fun is that? I'm going to see real quick. Let's just try 77. Okay, 77 also uses this foot, so I'm going to write just below 67 that I'm also checking out 77. With foot in. And then there, okay. And I'll just do a little bit of that right here. It just looks quite pixelated, and I want to see how that works out. It's like a cross stitch. It's very cute. Wow. There's so many things you can do with this. All right, so I have the beginnings of a very nice little stitch guide. How fun. The project that I was working on, the little dog mat, I'm going to continue that one in the way that I was yesterday, which was with the embroidery floss. But the others I'm going to go ahead and stitch on this sewing machine the way they were meant to be done per the pattern. So as you know, you would place your fabrics right sides together. So this is the Glamour fabric. This is the old pillow sham that I'm using as a quilting, batting, interfacing substitute. And then the backing fabric would go on like this, right sides together. And that way when you stitch all the way around, you leave your opening, you turn this out, it will encase the inside line interfacing. Okay, so I've got to put the machine back to stitch 1. I changed the foot back to foot J, and then I don't have to do anything else. I am going to probably use about 10 to 12 straight pins to hold this in place. Drink their water like I think they drink their water. They're going to be splashing a lot of water, and they're two outdoor. They're not strictly outdoor dogs, but they're very athletic farm dogs. And when they come in, they're very thirsty, and they just don't even give a second thought about what they're doing. They just drink water, and it splashes. It goes everywhere. So, and my sister has hardwood floors. So I figure a little bit of extra absorbency is a good thing, which is why I'm using this old recycled pillowcase, pillow sham thing. Instructions on the pattern say to use 1/4 inch seam allowance. I need to use a little bit bigger seam allowance because I have bulkier fabrics in this project. Now, if you do use a press-on, iron-on, fusible type interfacing, then you would not need to use a big 1/2 inch or even 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so before you start, you need to remember to leave an opening, and a lot of times it is handy to take a friction pin or some chalk. Trying to find a friction pin in here. There we go. And just draw, an X on one side and an X on the other side. Leave yourself enough room to get your hand in between the two X's so that you can pull this, oops, I went up to a 3. So that you can pull the fabric through to turn it right side out. Start on one of those X's. I'm going to line up on the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And remember, this machine will automatically lock the stitches if I have this button pushed. I do not want to sew over pins. Okay, now I'm going to trim away the extra seam allowance because, as I said, I made a bigger seam allowance because my fabric is thicker and bulkier. So I'm just going to trim this down to a reasonable amount, and then we'll turn this to the right side. So we've got the seam allowances trimmed down, and the next step is in the instructions is to cut this just a little snip into, but not through, the stitching at the top and lower edge of this mat for the dogs, where that bone bow is. And then we're going to turn it proper way out, like so. And because the sewing machine reinforced these stitches for me, I know I'm not going to accidentally pull them out while I'm doing this step. And then the fun thing is, if you want to, you can do a little bit of quilting. It's not necessary, and the pattern doesn't call for it, but you could if you wanted to. I'm going to go press this, and when I come back, we're going to finish this up by folding the open edges to the inside, pin that down, and then do a top stitch all the way around the mat. Okay, it's been pressed. This is how it looks. Oh, I can't really back you guys up too much more, but I'll show it to you once we get it done. Now what you do when you have an opening like so is you just press it, and we're going to start here where it's open and begin our top stitch all the way around. Ouch. And you can use a decorative stitch if you wish. I think I'll just go ahead and stick with the straight stitch. And I don't want to stitch over all this thread, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. I don't need the thread to be in the way of the remaining stitches. Okay, I think that's on the inside, and I just want to match this up. Okay, and I'm done, so I'll push this right here. It's just sewing all by itself. I'm not even pushing the pedal. It did that all by itself without me doing anything. Okay, and then I'm going to raise that needle, raise the presser foot, and I am done with the mat for Weebies and Dolly. Okay, here it is. I think it's extremely cute. So we have the shape of the bone all the way around, it would be perfect for 2 small to medium sized bowls or one really big water bowl, which is what the 2 farm dogs have. So I think it's just as sweet as it can be. Here it is, correctly oriented with the dogs facing the correct direction. And the fun thing is, I mean, the dogs may not appreciate the cute print, but we will. It's fun for dogs and dog moms and dads. Next is the mat that I will be making for Tori and Abby. This would be made out of this fabric, which will be a fish shape. And in keeping with the theme of keeping fabric out of the landfill, I need to find a fabric that I can line this with. I'm going to dig in here and look for the fish pattern piece. We'll see how difficult it is. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is either look at the pattern or, let's see, fish mat is piece number 15. So fish mat, piece 15. Okay, so I know it's not this one. It's not that one. It's not this one or this one or that one. There it is right there, piece 15. And I didn't have to unfold any of this. Alrighty. Alright, I found some ribbon that I forgot I had. It is an organza ribbon with cherry print and a more narrow organza with little daisies or flowers. So either one of these would be really cute ruched up. And I'm going to go ahead and give that a go. And I think I'll probably need twice the amount if I'm going to pull it up at all, maybe even more. We'll go 3, and I might do the top will be the narrow and the bottom will be the wide. So we're going to check it out. We'll see what happens. I'll be right back. The pieces of fabric have been cut. And so I've also done the trim. The only thing I have not done is the embroidery for the eye, which I will get to after I get these applied. I found when I was looking for this, well, I wasn't looking for this ribbon, but when I found this ribbon, I also found the remaining gobs of Robert Kaufman Kona cotton that I've had for, I don't know, over 20 years, because I bought a huge 120-yard bolt of it for my shop, and then we found out we were moving. So I had almost all of that Kona cotton. I've used it and used it and used it, and I think I might be down to maybe about 3 yards. So that's good. Right, this has been done, and what I need to do next is take this pattern piece right side up and figure out, let's see, I think I'll use a friction ink pen. And mark. or dots or whatever you decided to use. So what I had decided to do was use one piece of the Kona cotton as the inner lining and then one piece as the outer, the backing. Okay, so next, my plan is to basically treat it the way that they have us do the rickrack, which is to pin this down. And this side I don't have to do that too because it lock stitched itself. Okay, perfect. All right, then I think I'll pin this one on after I stitch this one down. So I'll be right back. All right, I will stitch this one down and then, actually I feel like this is twisted, so I've got to fix it. It's going to drive me nuts. It's got to be twisted. There we go. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we have the 2 rows of decorative gills, I guess we'll call it, and they're very girly for the 2 little girl kitty cats. And the next thing I think I'm going to do is embroider a heart. Instead of just a black eye, I'm going to do a blue heart right where this little eye should be, which is right there. So if you have a friction pin, you can do that right there. Okay, so it did do a heart, but it didn't do a heart in the thickness that I wanted. So I'm going to try to line it back up and go right back over the top of it and see if I don't get a little bit beefier looking heart shape. Well, it just sort of now looks like an embroidered eye, and I'm okay with that. The issue I'm having is that it's just not showing up very well, but that's okay. I think it's all right. In the future, I'm going to switch out my thread for a darker color. Okay, so now we will take the backing fabric that we have right here and pin it down. One thing I wanted to mention is that since these are going to go on the floor under a food or a water bowl, you might want to put one of those pieces of, I don't know what it looks like, a really open weave sticky mat that you can put under rugs to kind of keep it from moving around. And you wouldn't even have to do the full size. You could just do a small little piece here and here and here, because the bowl is likely going to hold this into place. Okay, so here it is stitched, and I need to trim my seam allowances and clip into these curves and then turn it right side out and finish. Okay, so when I go to the ironing board, I'm going to press all of this under, but because it is a sort of a circular path, I've got to be kind of careful that I'm following that same rounded turnout. Alrighty, so here is the little kitty cat mat. We have the embroidered eye for kitty cat safety, and we have a ribbon, kind of a ruched ribbon trim instead of rickrack. Gives it that 3D look. It's very frilly and pretty to go with our really frilly and pretty kitty cat fabric. So this one will be going to Oregon for Tori and Abby. And this is the dog bone dish mat, I guess, food mat, water mat. And it doesn't have decoration, but the pattern doesn't offer an option for decoration. I don't really know what you would put on this. I mean, aside from maybe a bow, and then that could just potentially be in the way and a safety hazard. So, and I personally think that our fabric, I think we just really have a winning look here. These are clearly made from fabrics that were just in the far back of the back room fabrics. So, I mean, they're okay. The dog doesn't mind. The kitty cat doesn't mind. They seem quite happy. But anyway, so this one will be going to the farm in Alabama. This one will be going to Oregon, and I have several more to make. This one I will be keeping for our two dogs, Bam Bam and Harley. This will go in my kitchen on the floor beside the big hutch where their water bowl is. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not already subscribed, please consider doing so. We would love to have you join us. Thanks again. Bye.